sit that far. If any of you want to fill in, I hope. If any of you want to fill in up here, there's also plenty of room on this side if folks are coming in. Yeah, great, one brave soul. I'll sit next to you. Welcome everyone, my name is Sonia Silbert. I'm the director of the Washington Peace Center. I'm so happy to have so many of you here for White Solidarity for Black Liberation. It is such an important conversation. It is such a challenging conversation. I thank you so much for showing up for it. And I really look forward to what comes out of this. A few housekeeping notices. First of all, there was a found wallet. Who found the wallet? Amanda Cruz or something? Who found the wallet? Yeah, what's the name again?
Amanda Cruz.
Amanda Cruz? Amanda Cruz. Who lost the wallet? No Amanda Cruz. No one knows Amanda Cruz. All right. Okay, well, we'll give it to the friends. Okay, so to begin with, thanks so much to the Friends Meeting House of Washington for hosting us. It was beautiful, beautiful space. From them, please respect this room. This is their worship room. Please no food or drink in this room and be really careful about it. No scraping the floor and whatnot. The bathrooms, there's single stall bathrooms straight back on this floor, and there's multiple person bathrooms downstairs if there's a line up here. I think a lot of you probably didn't get to sign in. Sorry, that was a little bit of a bottleneck. There's 2 laptops that have sign-in forms. Please, please, please make sure that you sign in when you're going out to your breakouts or during a break or something like that. We're going to be sending out a lot of follow-up materials, and we really want to make sure that we have your information so that we can get back in touch with you and move us all towards action and eliminating racism and creating the world that we want. So you have to sign in order for that to happen. We are going to be taking photographs today. There was a notice at the door that basically said upon walking into this room, you're giving up your rights to not be photographed and perhaps put on Facebook or something like that. This is Sarah, our wonderful intern, who is our official photographer. If you do not want to be photographed, she'll be hanging out at the door at the end of the panel. Please just stop by and let her know, and she'll do her best. Or if you see her taking a photograph, like that or something. But also, if any of you are taking pictures with your phones or whatever, please just be mindful that some people might not want to be broadcasting Facebook and checking with the people around you. I think that's it. I think before I intro the wonderful panelists, I'm going to have Jesse come on up here.
Can you ask everybody for the hashtag DC Solidarity?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, and if you are tweeting or Facebooking or whatever and you're into that kind of stuff, we have a hashtag. It's right over there. It's called DC Solidarity, one word. Yeah. We made it up ourselves. So please use it. There are people who couldn't come here today, and we are live streaming. Yeah, we're live streaming. Yeah, that's very fancy. So please tweet using DC Solidarity. Yeah, the Wi-Fi is not the best Wi-Fi in the whole world, but it's FMW, Friends Meeting House of Washington, and the password is lowercase simplicity. Please don't upload or download anything big, because that'll probably interrupt the live stream, but you can do that with your phone. Slower, sorry. Any questions about what I just said, now that I'm speaking slower? Great. So I'm going to hand it over to Jesse, who's just going to set some guidelines for the space, and then we'll go into our opening panel.
Thank you so much. Hi everyone, my name is Jessie. That's so nice of you all. I'm Jessie, I use they, them, their pronouns, and I just wanted to offer some guidelines on how to be together today. So if we could create a brave space for open communication today, where we can take risks to bring our full selves and be conscious and aware of what's happening within us and also around us in our groups today. And safe space doesn't necessarily mean comfortable space. So thinking about the spaces we're taking up and how we can be accountable in the space. We're going to be uncomfortable today sometimes, and it's going to be great to acknowledge that some things are coming up, and we may say some problematic things, but addressing those is how we can grow. And we're all here to be better allies, so let's create the space where we can all bring our full selves. This means respecting each other and also recognizing each other and being aware that many subjects might come up that could be triggering for folks for their personal experiences. So let's preface what we're saying and realize that what we're talking about might be someone's lived experience. Practicing self-care, also practicing group care. Folks may need to step out for a moment here and there, and we should be respectful of that and welcome them back in as they see fit. Some other guidelines on how to be with each other today. If we catch ourselves saying something off, some folks like to use ouch or oops as a way to recognize that we've said something wrong. We're going to take a lot from what we've learned today and incorporate that into our practices as we move about the world. But unless we're granted permission, let's keep the personal stories in the rooms that we occupy today. Stepping up and stepping back in conversation, making sure we're not taking too much space, and also recognizing our privileges as we step up and step back. Let's challenge the ideas, and we can challenge the ideas and practices presented today, but let's not challenge people themselves when they speak to their truths. Let's also try to use I statements, such as in my experience, or I feel this way when. We're all here to learn, so let's try not to demean, devalue, or put down people for their experiences or lack of experiences. And let's set a goal and space to not blame people for misinformation that we may have learned in the past, but let's be accountable moving forward and hold each other accountable for not repeating this misinformation or assaultive behavior that we may have learned otherwise. And practicing forgiveness of ourselves and of others. We know that different isms may come up today, so talking about sexism, classism, racism, cissexism, heterosexism, but let's speak our discomfort as these things come up. And maintaining gender neutrality in your language, asking about preferred pronouns, and finally treating everyone as an individual and not the representative for a group that they're part of, and believing in our common best intentions today as we create this space and hear from our lovely panelists. Thank you all so much for taking a moment with me, and now I will pass it back.
Thank you, Jessie. So we have a wonderful opening panel for you that I'll introduce in a moment. And then we'll have some time for questions and answers at the end. And we'll have a few minutes of debrief here in this room. Then there's going to be 5 different breakouts that y'all can choose between, one in this room and 4 scattered throughout the building that we'll announce after the panel. And then after the breakouts, which will be about an hour 15 or so, we'll all come back here, and that's when we're going to talk about what ongoing projects and campaigns are happening in the DC area that you can get plugged into. If you have to leave before the end, we will put things out on the table during the breakouts. We'll have an evaluation sheet and a get involved sheet, so you can check off which of the projects you're interested in, and then we can connect you with the organizers. So if you do have to leave early, which I hope none of you will, but if some of you do, please come back and fill out those forms before you have to leave. All right, and now we actually had a last-minute cancellation due to sickness, which is why we get to have time for Q&A, because otherwise we're just going to have them all talk at you, and then you're going to have to debrief on your own. So, our smaller, still wonderful panel, I'm going to start with Netford Freeman, who's been a political organizer and activist since 1985 on a wide variety of issues, including DC statehood, healthcare, freeing the Cuban Five, Pan-African political education, grassroots organizing, and much more. He currently works with the Institute for Policy Studies, as well as WPFW and the Wayside Center for Popular Education. So, Netfa, it's all you.
Thank you, everyone. It's an honor to be here. Always an honor to be in space with people who are trying to make a fundamental change. I want to start with asking a question. it's a rhetorical question, and I think it's something we should all be contemplating, and it might not sound like it's relevant to this subject, but I think it is. It is, how do we do revolutionary work in reform struggles without becoming reformist? And I think that is a cutting-edge question, because often what we're doing is we're working on issues, we're working in a moment where something arises and we're responding, putting out brush fires, as some people might say. But I think if we all agree that things like racism are systemic issues, then we have to be working for revolution. We have to be working to change the system. And so we want, and we do know that reform struggles are a part of making change. And so stand up. Oh, man. I'm sorry. I don't really like being in the center of attention. People don't know me. But anyway, I'll stand up and so I wanted to start with that. And I believe there's actually an article that I would suggest people read. It's online. It's by Mao Zedong. It's called Combat Liberalism. And people should read that article and be open to what it might offer. It's easy to find, obviously, Mao Zedong, Combat Liberalism. Now, I'm going to do something. I'm going to try to be really brief. And Sonia was gracious enough to give me some bullet point questions to kind of channel my remarks or what I wanted to share. And that was good. And so I'm going to do a little combination of maybe sometime reading some of these disjointed thoughts that I had, and also doing a little explanation maybe. But I'm going to start with these questions, so you can understand what I'm talking about. And the first thing is, why is this movement so big right now? Where did this come from, and what organizing happened in the past to set it up? So one thing I think is important is that we should realize nothing happens in a vacuum. And so things don't just pop up once we recognize them. There was always something before that was going on that gave rise to it, that gave birth to it. And that also movements, to me, are fueled, are energized by the dialectical relationship between at least two or more contending or competing forces. This is my philosophy. I'm what we call dialectical historical materialist, and I think so. It's important to recognize that. And there's a quote I read from a person, I can't remember his name right now. I just got the article trying to prepare for this. And he says, all political consciousness is a product of a particular time and place. In every instance, it is subject to limiting factors and must sooner or later be acknowledged and transcended by those who inherit it. And so right now when we see the Black Lives Movement, and any kind of movement, particularly when we look at the role of young people in any type of historical moment, it's because they're recognizing what they've inherited, and they're trying to acknowledge it and try to address it. And so I think that's very important. But then we also look at things like what we hear. I don't know how many people have heard of Robert F. Williams, who was with NAACP in Monroe, North Carolina, and he was one of the people that started the idea, or actually the activism around the right to armed self-defense in the face of racism in this country. And a lot of movements, we hear a lot about things being a non-violent movement and everything, which at times in this day and time kind of discounts the right of people who are bearing the brunt of repression, brutal repression, to actually defend themselves, and it being dismissed as wanting to advocate violence and whatnot. And we see with the Deacons of Defense and Robert Williams, the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, which was the name, was people asserting our right to not just take take violence from people. And I think that's important in terms of if we're going to be allies, if we're going to be allies to a Black Lives Movement, you can't, you have to acknowledge that this is also part of our movement. This is also part of the Black movement. That we have the right to armed self-defense, or any kind of self-defense, whatever we deem necessary. And so you have to be able to embrace all aspects of the movement, not just that which makes you feel comfortable. And so you don't want to, avoid that type of thing. And then, and I also mention that because if we think about things like, if you listen to Robert Williams, who's also a journalist, media activist, Radio Free Dixie and all this, and so you can actually get a lot of his audio. And we just aired some of it on our show, and what he was saying was like, he was right here in 2015 talking about how the police disposition to us here now. And so when you listen to the people, what we're facing now is not new. And so this is where the movement comes from, and the fact that these types of repression and how we have thought about the repression is not new, and we just coming to a head at this particular time, maybe because of a lot of reasons. Social media, now things are being caught on camera, and all kind of things. And then also there are things like there might be an increase, a spike in repression. There is a spike in repression, largely because of the Obama era. Now that there's a black president, who I'm not a fan of, but that's another question. But because of that, it causes reaction in people who are the extreme right extremists who would see this as a threat to their reality and their existence. And so there has been a spike. And so that also can cause, and part of the answer to the question, why is this movement so big? And then we have to look at things like the hip-hop, the rise of hip-hop, and particularly around the 80s and that kind of hip-hop. How many people heard of Public Enemy, KRS-One? And a lot of it was actually bringing about the consciousness that included the disposition of the relationship of police to us in this neighborhood. That serve and protect thing was not anything we could actually ever internalize or experience. Our parents often had to teach us, be careful with the police, don't run from them, all kind of things. I grew up with my mother worrying about where I was and what was going to happen to me when I was out. And so that, those kind of things, the hip-hop and the rising consciousness and the agitation right now, you even see, to me, I think hip-hop is one of the most cutting-edge. Hip-hop and rap are two different things. Just want to put that out there. So hip-hop now, to me, is the most cutting-edge cultural expression in terms of revolutionizing and raising the consciousness of people all over the world. And so I think it also helps it's helped to disseminate and keep, and it's a movement. It's not just the music, it's so much. And so that's what I mean when I say that. So this is another part of the answer to the question. Lastly, I would say mostly in the late 1990s to 2000, there was, and a lot of us know because we worked in the nonprofit industrial complex for a while, that there was also an increase in funding and looking to support youth groups, youth-led organizations and whatnot. And so funding was going to them, and a lot of them would be youth organizations of people of color. And so because youth are very radical, they didn't just take the moderate road and just accept what, the funding guidelines and whatnot. So a lot of it turned into actually looking at their experiences in the communities, starting cop marches and talking about police brutality and those kind of things. I'm talking about the early 2000s, late 1990s. And so a lot of those things gave rise to also consciousness, and they were also utilizing popular education. I guess I could say way back. That's long enough that I might be able to still claim the youth part back then. Popular education as a method of working with each other and transforming people's consciousness and our consciousness. So, and also the prison industrial complex. So all these things were actually there was an awakening of these things, I think, or heightening of it. Because as I said before, there was always this understanding, but then this is a transferring of this knowledge to a newer generation and also a broader dissemination of it. And then also, lastly, I think made a very strong impact on the Black Lives Matter movement and the outcome, which we can see maybe started with, some people might pin it to when Trayvon Martin was murdered, was the Malcolm X grassroots movement. And they were actually doing a lot of cop wash things, prison industrial complex stuff, and also came out with a report, worked with other people, with Arlene Eisen, and the report that they came out with, that talked about they showed, statistically speaking, that every 28 hours a black person, mostly black people, are killed by a police officer, a vigilante, or a security guard. Every 28 hours. And that came out, and so now that brings me to the role of the media, alternative media. Of course that didn't get reported by NBC or anything like that, but alternative media shameless plug, WPFW and stuff like that, and, would report this. And so that, and then also social media, because the fact that social media is out there, it became more, not that we didn't know, but a lot of people didn't know. And it made it also concretized it because it was a report, just like the ones that a lot of us create that have statistics and concrete information. And so that to me is the answer to the question, why is this movement so big right now? Where did it come from? And what organizing happened in the past to set it up. The next question, what are the different black liberation movements you've seen? This was a little hard for me because it made me have to talk about myself a little bit. Liberation movements you've seen, especially in DC, and what happened in them, successes and challenges. But it was very interesting to pull out of my brain a lot of stuff I had forgotten. So when I came to DC, I came to go to Howard University, and I joined in 1985 the All African People's Revolutionary Party. And that was my concrete exposure to all kind of things, political, internationally political, anyway, that was a lot. So that's a Black Pan-African student movement, and I was in the Black Pan-African student movement. I'm calling it kind of both. It might be separate, but I'm just putting that out there. And those movements embodied, there were also organizations, and some people might remember, some of the people in the room might remember DC SCAR, DC Student Coalition Against Apartheid and Racism. I can't remember Ray's name. Brother Ray, he was actually murdered. He was one of the leaders of that organization. And so this is the anti-apartheid movement time, and a lot of students getting involved in the anti-apartheid movement. And that was actually a coalition that was comprised of all the area campuses, Howard University, Georgetown, Maryland University, GW, and mostly a lot of the organizers were the black, I say African, well, that's just what I'm not going to try to change it. So African students on the campuses would be leading this organization. But they were also, it was diverse racially too. But that was part of the things we saw, and I think it's still related. It's related to the movement. It's related to students, the transferring of activism and a scope, a global scope for things, transferring Black liberation struggle knowledge or Black consciousness movement or Pan-Africanism. And then also there was an organization on Howard's campus, because I was at Howard's campus, called Black Neoforce. Actually, there's some online about DC SCAR. And so that was a surprise to me. And then Black Neoforce, which I couldn't remember. How many people have heard of Sister Soldier? All right. So Sister Soldier was in Black Neoforce, and then also Roscoe Rapa, who's now the mayor of Newark, New Jersey. And he was going to Howard at that time. And so, anyway, those were the kind of things that were some of the movements before it. Successes and challenges of it. I'm going to read this a little bit, I guess. We're continuing, the successes will be continuing the radical tradition of youth, students and youth. It initiated the anti-war movement that was against the Iraq War, and also Panama. Panama was invaded at that time. And so these were movements in the 90s that actually internationalized the people, broadened people's scope, and they're looking at how transformation should come, and not just in the confines of your national borders and dealing with only domestic things. And then also, well, I just said that, solidified internationalism and a lot of transcontinental projects in terms of Black. Okay. Oh, all right. I can be really quick on this. That came about. The challenges are. The role of individuals, students, is fleeting. So students are in school, when students are a large part of the youth movement, that's a fleeting thing because a lot of times they leave school, they get other jobs that, and they can become, and also even organizations get disrupted because you're in there for whatever, and then, everyone changes, that kind of thing happens. And then often people, when they do leave, they become more moderate versus more revolutionary because of whatever, they get a new job or something like that. Some even go as far as to just completely selling out the movement. It's true. And then also, even if you don't, there's a tendency to go into, even if you're trying to be into the nonprofit world and those kind of things, which actually also, regardless of how radical we might be, it might keep us being more moderate than not because we're confined with having to keep funding and actually tailor our programming and our mission because of the more more conservative funders that end up funding mostly conservative funders. And I think that I might as well stop there. Let me see if there's something else. The roles of white allies have you seen? Oh, okay. Let me know. This is important. Today's the question is, what roles for white allies have you seen in this movement, and one has it been helpful, and one has it been destructive? And so today's the definition, when I got to introduce the way I got to introduce the movement, the term ally was used different. In the All African People's Revolutionary Party, we didn't define it the same way. It was based on the organization, how we define it. And so it was allies were any organization that we could work with that was progressive or even revolutionary for one African. Allies were organizations who were other people who were in organizations that weren't the All African People's Revolutionary Party, that you were black or you were African organization, no matter where in the world. And so that's how it was defined, that's how I got introduced to it. But of course, we're using it now broader, and maybe even, I would say, maybe a little, a bit more confining, because one of the first allies that I remember working with that was a white organization, the white organizations were not even US based, was the Irish Republican movement. And they were serious, great allies. They understood Pan-Africanism, talked about it, and also I think it was a similar history. It was a colonial history. They were the first subjects of British colonialism in the world. And so we can actually identify it on that sense. And I think the way allies used now, it's actually talking about, it's saying that to be an ally, you're more privileged than the group that you're dealing with. In this instance, it wasn't privilege there. It was something else. And it was a very beneficial and interesting relationship, and made us have to deal with a whole lot of things. We'd have things with, and then also we had, I'm going to be real quick with this one. There was a situation where people would come up to us, other black people, and say, "Oh, you got the white people on this thing." You know, the African Liberation Day would come, and and so we'd be forced to have to confront that. And I think that was a very enriching thing, and it helped us have to deal with the different misunderstandings we all have about each other within the context of being, African. We have to deal with, okay, it's not about this. Well, why are you on All African People's Revolutionary Party? If you're all African, then why are you? So it was very interesting, those kind of things, and also vice versa too. Other people saying, "Why you got the Nation of Islam and they're racist and all that." It's like, well, those are African people, they're black, they're our allies. You can't tell us. We have to work with all our people, our ideas to unify. And so that is so that was it. And then also, student on the UDC's campus, there was there were groups. They will remain nameless, who wanted to help us. They wanted to help. We had a student movement. There was largely UDC when I went there, was mostly people of African descent, and then others that weren't, mostly international students that were coming from another country. And so we had some student movements there. That student movement was pretty much, you had to say it was a black movement. It was a black lit movement, mostly black students. And there were groups that came from outside, weren't even students. And they were white organizations, and they were trying to dictate to us, they thought we should have our own meetings and all kind of stuff like that. And so those were learning experiences too, where those were destructive, they were corrosive in terms of how they engaged with us. But then we also had white allies, and this was more on an individual level. Most of what I'm talking about is organizational level. And then on the individual, I know you didn't do anything. Some of you's not giving me. I'm just feeling self-conscious. But there was this Andrew. He owned the coffee shop, Sirius Coffee Shop, right there on Van Ness. Great guy. And he ended up actually creating Visions Cinema and Bistro that was up on Connecticut Avenue. But he actually gave us money in our movement to help us, take over the building and have walkie-talkies and stuff like that. And he also opened up the coffee shop so we could have meetings there. So that was Alan. He didn't judge, and he had serious conversations with us. He would honestly come and ask us things. And that's another thing we appreciated, because he wasn't afraid to ask what was on his mind and try to understand things. And that's something that people have to get over. You can't be thinking that you asking a question or curiosity is racism. It might be, maybe you have some ideas that might need to be challenged or whatever, or challenged, and you have to be okay with it. And so anyway, yes. I have a lot more, but I think I should stop. Yeah. Thank you. Oh, one more thing. anti-apartheid movement.